The scorched earth of your heart bears the scars, but your heart was never meant to be a battlefield. Your heart is a garden. Now, if you are utterly devastated and fallen to your knees feeling helpless, lost, scared, betrayed, and emotionally wounded, how on earth do we start to get back up and heal from the war zone our hearts have been through?
Pain tells us that we need something. So when we are hungry, we get hunger pangs. That means I need food. We eat, and then we are satiated. But we will be hungry tomorrow. We will be hungry the next day. Well, our emotional pain are hunger pangs for something that we need. So when I'm sad, when I am lonely, I need connection. When I am angry, I need value, I need boundaries. When I am scared, I need to feel safe. And so instead of responding to the need, instead of feeding what we need, connection, value, safety, we need these things to survive, we try to ignore those feelings and keep on pushing forward. But you can't run the marathon of your life with those needs unmet. You will collapse along the way. And so it's not just about getting back up, it's saying, what do I need right now? I need to feel connection. I need to feel safe with a person. Well, maybe that's not the person you just broke up with. Maybe that's not the person that just left you, but it's good to embrace the fact that I need relationship. I may not need relationship with him, but I need relationship. And so sometimes I think we don't want to tap into our loneliness or our sadness because we think that it means I need this person who I can't have anymore. No, I need people. I need relationships, but they need to be in healthy spaces. I may need my friends right now. I may need my mom right now if I have a healthy relationship with my mom. I may need my minister, my sorority sisters. There are other relationships that can feed our need for connection. The challenge is we let ourselves get so hungry. If I go to the grocery store and I've had breakfast and lunch and I'm satiated and I go shopping for dinner, I'm gonna buy the healthy thing. But if I haven't eaten the entire day and then I show up at the grocery store at 6:30 p.m., I'm not going to the fresh fish counter. I'm going to the deli. I'm getting the fried chicken. I'm getting ice cream because I have let myself get so hungry that now it is shifting my capacity to choose to meet the need in a healthy way. But that's because I let myself get too hungry. We often don't meet our needs for connection on a regular basis, our needs for value, safety on a regular basis. We ignore those emotions that are saying eat, get what you need until we're starving for connection. And then we don't go to the healthy place. We go to the unhealthy place, not because the need is bad, hunger's not bad, but because I went so long without getting the need met that now my decision-making is compromised. So it's not the sadness, it's waiting so long to take care of myself. That's what actually leads to that weaker decision. Does that make sense?
Yes, oh my God, like I totally understand.
Yeah.
So if we have that moment of heartbreak, feeling lonely, sad, what we do is we retract, but actually we should ask ourselves, what do we need? Okay, I need to be around somebody. I need to feel loved.
Yes.
Okay, if you need to feel loved, who can I go to love me or to help me feel loved that isn't necessarily let's say just for this argument, say the toxic person.
Right.
So if I get that fed through other means, then I'm less likely to go back to the thing that caused me the heartbreak in the first place.
Exactly. And very often, one of the things that can help us move out of toxic relationships is slowly building on the healthy relationships we do have. Because when something's been filling a space and then I just take it and now there's zero there. But maybe instead of trying to run away right now from that toxic boyfriend, are you taking the time to spend more time with your friends who are healthy? Are you taking the time to spend time in your faith community? Are you going to your workout group, your book club? Who else in your life are you building healthy connection with that will help you have the strength to pull away from the thing that is hurting you the most? Very often, one of the aspects of toxic relationships is that they're consuming all of my relational energy. I'm not pouring it anywhere else. I've stopped spending time with my friends. I've stopped going to work out. I've stopped going for that run, and I'm spending all my energy trying to fix this relationship. Just start to spread out your emotional energy. We don't need to have all our emotional eggs in any one basket. I think that's a real challenge, but we do that because we're seeking this need to be met, and we think that's the only place the need can be met. And that's not actually true.
So You talk in your book about broken heart syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't mind explaining what broken heart syndrome is and then how we can actually, what's the antidote?
So broken heart syndrome is actually a biological response to an overwhelming stressor that's related to loss. So a couple years ago when we had the Uvalde shooting, we know that one of the teachers who died, a few days later, her husband went to put flowers at her memorial and had a heart attack on the spot. And they believe that he died of broken heart syndrome. Literally, the stress hormones flooding the heart from a deep loss like that changes the shape of your heart and causes it not to spread blood properly and can actually kill someone. And so that teaches us something. Our emotions are deep, real bodily experiences. They are not the products of our thoughts. And so often we try and fix how we're feeling by trying to think about something else. But we have to actually allow the stress out of our bodies. And so we need to go ahead and break down and cry. We need to go ahead and yell. We need to throw the pillow. We need to express it because those emotions have an energy in them that we need to release from our bodies. We don't want to just curl up and be still. We want to allow it to flow through so that our bodies can reset themselves. But very often we resist that. We feel like if I finally start crying, I broke down. I finally broke down and cried. I finally lost my temper. No, you should have let that thing out a while back. Your body is trying to regulate itself by releasing tears, by releasing sound, by releasing a movement. And when we allow our emotions to be experienced and to flow through our bodies, we get a reset. That allows us then to start to think about what is my next move. But you cannot jump over that energy with your mind. You must experience your pain. There's no way to skip it.
Why then have us, specifically women, I'm just going to say that, hold back on that, hold back on wailing and crying? What is it that stops us from doing that in order to heal?
We've absorbed social messages telling us that emotions are a weakness. That if I am crying or if I am feeling deeply, I'm not thinking, as if my feelings and my thoughts are mutually exclusive. I can't be thinking clearly if I'm experiencing an emotion. It makes me look weaker. It means that I'm not trustworthy. It means that I don't know how to lead or how to be in control or how to have authority. All of the things that we associate with being emotionless are what we look at as masculine traits. And we don't need to do that. We need to allow our bodies to actually feel. I think another reason why women are disconnected from their emotions is because we've disconnected from our bodies. We treat our bodies as this war zone as well, where I need to make it smaller, I need to make it stronger, I need to look a certain way, I need to be perfect. And so we will go through pain trying to adjust how we look and disconnect from the pain rather than actually connect to what our bodies are feeling. And emotions begin in our bodies. When we say we're sad, what are we really saying? I feel a heaviness in my chest. I feel a heaviness behind my eyes. My head is down a little bit. We are having these physical experiences that come into awareness, and then we label that the emotion. How do you know when you're mad? How do you actually know? Your neck gets hot. You feel tension. Sometimes people clench their fists. Our jaw is tight. We feel these things in our bodies, and as they come in our awareness, then we name them a certain emotion. And so if we would slow down and connect to what our bodies are feeling and allow those feelings and express those feelings, we would be much healthier and we'd be in a position to get our needs met.
That's what I was going to ask, what the knock-on effect becomes if we don't do that. Because to your point, you mentioned it earlier, if we have that broken heart, the belief or the messaging that people say is like, oh, just get over it. Well, it was no good in a way. You know, like come on, you're still, whining on about that, or you're still hurt over that guy, he left you or whatever happened. There's that pressure in order to hide it, to never express it. So what does that end up becoming, and what does that look like long term if you don't actually then address it?
What you're doing is resisting grief. When a relationship ends, if it's been a significant relationship especially, there is grief attached to that. And our culture, especially in the West, we're terrible with grief. Even when a loved one dies, we rush people. We're just like, okay, well, everybody's moving forward as if once we've had the funeral, everyone should be fine. And when a year later or 2 years later comes and people are still grieving that loved one, they often don't feel like they can talk about it because other people think they should have moved on already. And we often have the same experience with relationships. There is grief when we separate from someone that we have become attached to, whom we have loved. And very often, especially if it was an unhealthy relationship, we tell them, well, it wasn't healthy, it was toxic, it wasn't real love, so you should just be able to get over it. No, it was real love. It may not have been healthy, but the attachment, the concern, the connection, the shared experiences, real. And so now that person is grieving. We have to allow them to grieve. And if you have survived childhood traumas, where relationships were difficult in your childhood, you may have been bullied, you may have had a difficult relationship with your mother, perhaps you were sexually abused, the grief of a new relationship being lost echoes all the way back to childhood. So very often we're not only grieving the relationship we just lost, but there's grief from that early loss as a child that's making this grief feel even worse. And so we must allow ourselves to grieve. And then, hey, I'm a therapist. I want you to get in that therapy chair and start talking through those things so we can work on healing old pain so that we're more resilient when we have new losses.
Oh, yeah. That never actually occurred to me of how much that then impacts your new losses.
Absolutely. So imagine if when you stub your toe in the middle of the night, worst pain, right? As soon as your foot hits the bed, you're like, oh, here it comes. You know that pain's gonna come all the way up your leg and you have to experience it. There's no way to stop it. Imagine if you could stop that pain and hold it for later. And you stub your toe 100 times in this life. And then all of a sudden, all of that pain comes in at once. That's kind of what happens with our emotional pain. We put it aside, we put it aside, we put it aside, and then something happens, we can't hold it anymore. And not only is the pain of the moment out, but all of the pain that you put aside that's been piling up suddenly is flowing through you. And that's why it feels so overwhelming. But it's not just the pain of the moment. It's all of those past pain experiences suddenly can come up at the same time. Because we think if we avoid emotion, it went away. But I always tell people your emotion won't last forever, but it will wait forever. It will wait forever for its opportunity to be expressed. It will wait.
Your emotions won't last forever, but it will wait forever.
It will wait forever. When we finally do break down crying, most of us will stop crying in 20 to 30 minutes. No one's ever cried nonstop for 3 hours. Your body will take care of itself in releasing that pain. And then there's a surge of hormones that comes behind that rebalances us and makes us feel calm. That's why when we finally do break down crying, we feel better when it's over. And so we should just get into it anyway, right? And so your emotion won't last forever. There's gonna be 20, 30 minutes, but it will wait forever. It will wait forever. And so I want people to be more proactive in experiencing and expressing their pain as it comes, rather than holding it in and piling it up. So then suddenly they feel overwhelmed. Let it out.
Yeah, your analogy of the toe, by the way.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was like, oh, if you don't get it seen to and the pain comes rushing, at that point, they're either amputating the toe, the foot, or the entire leg.
Right.
And so the more you leave it, the more they're amputating. And then to think through what that would actually look like because the pain's too severe, that's what we're kind of doing to our heart.
That is it. And what you just said is so important. It's the difference between an injury and a trauma. So I can stub my toe in the middle of the night. It hurts really bad, but when I wake up in the morning, I'm okay. But if I broke my toe, when I wake up in the morning, I'm not okay. And if I don't get that attended to, all of the things you've said, sometimes we've experienced some hurts and they pass and we move on. But if it's still hurting from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that was probably a trauma. And we need to get into healing mode now. And so it's important to embrace that you may have survived a trauma. And betrayal is a form of trauma for people. We call it betrayal trauma. It's very real, and it can change the way that we see ourselves. It can change the way we see other people and the way we see the world and relationships, and leave us feeling chronically unsafe. So that even when we step into new relationships and we have no evidence that it's not safe, we feel unsafe because we have experienced trauma in the past. So we must slow down and heal. We must slow down and heal.
Is that why I believe one of your quotes in your book is a pain denied is a pain multiplied?
That's it. It multiplies. It will wait. It will wait. And it will show up again and again. That's why so many people recognize they keep dating the same person in different bodies, in different outfits, but the same person, because an unmet need that we have not tuned into is looking to get its need met in a way that isn't healthy. We have to tap into what that need was and how we can fix it. And many of those come from attachment issues. I don't know if you've talked much about that, but attachment is the study of how we form relationships. And when we have poor attachment experiences, particularly as children, we can struggle our whole lives in how we attach to other people. And so we find ourselves attracted to the needs that weren't met. If your father was consistently not there, or your mom was consistently critical, you'll find yourself in relationships with people that are repeating that pattern. The little girl inside you is still trying to get mom to treat me a certain way, dad to treat me a certain way, and we look for that in a partner.
Does sometimes then in those moments, pain is so familiar
Yes.
that there's comfort in it?
There's
instead-
familiarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like the familiar. It may not even be fully comfortable, but it's familiar. At least I know these streets. At
Right.
least I know these roads. I don't know other roads, but I know these roads. And so we get back into, and it's not conscious. I think that's what hurts people's feelings. Are you saying that I'm doing this on purpose? Of course not. But if that part of you still wants the attention that you didn't get, or still wants the validation that you didn't get, you don't realize it, but you're often looking for it. And you're creating relationships where that need is there, and you're just chasing it, but it never gets met. And here's the thing, if you've done that, the person you're in relationship, something unhealthy is going on for them too. We really need to recognize that relationships are two-way streets. We co-create them. And so let's look less at, am I with a toxic person, than have I participated in a toxic situation? How are we together creating something that's unsafe and unhealthy for us both? Because the relationship can't be bad for you and not also bad for the other person. It can't be toxic just for you and also not toxic for the other person. This is a two-way street. We create these things together.
So what about, I'm going to play the voice of the audience right now, who let's say has been in that situation. They're like, no, they were manipulative. They were gaslighting me. I had nothing but empathy for them. I was really trying to help them and they just used me.
Yeah, and the question would be, what within you was willing to pour into this one-way relationship for so long? What within you says, I can turn down what I need to prioritize what you need? What in you said, I can forego being loved and cared for and valued for your need to somehow be rescued by me?
Ooh, that's so interesting. I never would have thought of that as being toxic, but I hear what you're saying.
Isn't it though?
Yeah. It's so strange. It's like, I was almost like, yeah.
Isn't it though?
Oh my God, you've got me speechless.
When we are in relationships that are unhealthy, we usually, I would say this, we have the same degree of brokenness. It's just a different shape. So if I am a puzzle piece that has a big piece sticking out on the side, and you're a puzzle piece that has a big hole in it, click, neither of those things are balanced. Our broken parts are of the same magnitude. They're just shaped differently.
I got nothing to come back with on that.
That's it. Yeah. And usually one person in the relationship, and often it's the woman, is showing up in a way that's socially acceptable. So she doesn't recognize that this is actually imbalanced. This is actually missing. This is actually broken. So if someone is taking in a relationship at a toxic level, somebody's giving at a toxic level.
So what's the emotion around if something like this happens? You mentioned earlier, some people, we end up going back to that same type of person, different body, different face, different name, but it's exactly the same person. How much of the emotion is, I don't want to say addicted, or maybe it's addicted to that type of pain so that they never want to leave? And what I mean by that is, you talk about it in your book about how when there's pain, sometimes you're so drawn to the pain, because it's familiar, but also so that there's no surprise down the road that you're going to get hurt again.
That's a different kind of pain. And so many people have been in pain for so long, it almost becomes normal. And they start ranking pain. I'd rather stay here and experience this pain than experience the pain of the unknown, of being single again, the ambiguity of that. That's pain too. So, people always say, choose your hard. We're all trying to do that all the time. There may be a woman in a relationship where this man is violent with her. She's experiencing deep physical pain, but the emotional pain of ending the relationship feels more threatening. We're all negotiating pain all the time, but sometimes we have to slow down and really look at what we're saying and ask ourselves why. Why is it that I'm willing to experience this? Is it for fear that the future can't be better or that the future would be worse?
All right, so how do we deal with both of those? If you're not feeling strong and healthy on the inside, it's nearly impossible to show up and crush your goals and dreams. Take it from me. I ignored my health for so long and it had such a negative impact on my life, my confidence, and my self-esteem. And that's why I want to tell you about Joy Women's Wellness. Joy Women's Wellness helps women like you and me take control of our well-being so we can feel like us again. Joy Women's Wellness will do a simple blood draw and then give you a super in-depth functional health report. And together with your clinician, you can come up with a game plan for how to balance your hormones, get your energy back, and start sleeping through the night. So prioritize your health and just feel better from the inside out. Click the link below and run over to Joy to get your levels checked right now. And guys, if you use my coupon code, they're gonna give you 10% discount so you can go and get started. That's choosejoy.co.
Sometimes just articulating that truth helps. I want people to draw out their sentences. I can't leave this relationship. Why not? I can't leave this relationship because then I may have made a mistake. And if you made a mistake, if I made a mistake, then I will be afraid that I'll never get it right. And if you never get it right, like I want them to walk it all the way out until you get to the point where you say, the pain and the guilt that I'm experiencing now isn't worth the trade. Does that make sense? So, and it doesn't always have to be romantic relationships. Some people have toxic relationships with their mom. They see their mom's name come up in the caller ID and they say, I have to answer. If I don't answer, then she'll be mad at me. If I do answer, I'm going to be really distressed by the time we get off the phone. So what they're saying is experiencing my mom's anger is worse than how I will feel after I talk to her. And then rank that. And sometimes when people say that out loud, it's like, wait a minute. If I'm gonna feel guilty for not answering, but I'm also gonna feel dejected for how she talks to me, I'm willing to choose feeling guilty over feeling dejected. I'm not answering.
And so is it that we then don't finish the sentence, and in not finishing the sentence, we don't know why we do something and it's just we resort to the means?
We're going by habit at this point. We're just going by habit. I always answer when my mom calls. I have to answer when my mom calls. I can't not answer. So we don't question ourselves. But at the end, it's about how we feel. I'll feel guilty if I don't answer. But until someone says, well, how do you feel after you talk with her? I feel angry, I feel dejected, I feel not good enough. Okay, so if we're gonna put that on a scale, guilt for not answering, angry, dejected, not good enough, which one weighs more for you? And then suddenly it's like, hey, I'll take the guilt. And then we find out that guilt doesn't last forever. We increase our tolerance for saying no. We increase our tolerance for what it feels like to say no. And then that pain starts to lessen and this pain is gone. And suddenly something's changed. And so our capacity to experience our emotional pain is like lifting weights. I start with 3 pounds. You know, this little muscle right here, I'm not very strong. So I'd need like 3 pounds for this one, right? And just because someone else can do 20 doesn't mean that I have to start with 20. I can start with 3. I can start with not answering the phone on the first ring. Maybe waiting 4 rings to answer is a stretch. So I practice that. And then maybe I don't answer at all. And then maybe I don't answer 2 days in a row. Sometimes we work our way up to being able to tolerate the discomfort of change. It doesn't have to happen all at once. And it's not all or nothing. And be proud of yourself for those baby steps.
How important is that last part?
Huge. Because we make it seem like change is this sweeping thing. And that if we didn't make the change all at once, we failed. But baby steps are something to be proud of. Very often, change happens backwards. I think most of the time. We do the same thing again. We answer the phone on the first ring and we let mom fuss us out and leave us feeling bad. And then we say, I don't want to answer anymore. The next time, we let it ring a few times. And then we still answer. But good for you for letting it ring a few times. And the next time we let it ring a few times, we answer, and halfway through mom's rant, we say, hey, I gotta go. We don't stay for the whole thing. We leave in the middle, and then we leave earlier. And then one day you realize you didn't even answer the phone. And so that's why I say change happens backwards. We stop sooner in the process, until finally we don't even engage. And it's okay to acknowledge every baby step because eventually you get there.
And that's what then makes you proud of yourself. It builds, I talk about confidence a lot on this show. And so confidence to me, you don't just ever wake up and get it. It's like, I use the analogy of going to the gym.
Yes.
It's like you don't just have the confidence, you have to do the baby steps. And in what you're saying, actually, that feels like you're building the confidence to be able to set the boundaries.
Yes.
So you're doing it once, you're doing it twice, that, you know, the goalpost, if you will, is slightly moving and moving and moving. And you build the competence to be able to not let guilt take over.
Yeah, because you become able to tolerate the guilt. That's our problem. We don't tolerate discomfort very well. Our relationship with pain is not healthy. We feel like we cannot be in pain at any time. If I'm in pain, I must get out right now. Life brings pain. And the more that we're able to tolerate it in the moment and experience and express it, the better we'll be. And I love the word confidence because that's how it breaks down. C-O-N, con, means with. Fidence, fidelity, faithfulness. How do I live with faithfulness to myself? That's what confidence really is about, that I live with faithfulness to myself. I am faithful to me. I am faithful to my belief in my gifts. I am faithful to my choice to be loved properly. I am faithful to the use of my voice. How can I be faithful to myself? So many women have experienced relationships where people were not faithful to them, and they know what that pain feels like. Turn it around. What would it mean for you to live with faithfulness, with fidelity to yourself?
How did I not know that confidence meant that? Oh my God.
You know, I just saw the word in front of me when you said it, and I saw that with fidence, fidelity, and I thought, my goodness.
Be faithful to ourselves.
Be faithful to yourself. Fidelity. So many of us have committed infidelity against ourselves, and we constantly do. We know what we want in a relationship. We know what we need. We might even sit down and write it down. I want someone who's kind. I want someone who's consistent. I want someone who cares for me, who listens. And then we meet someone and they do not exhibit those behaviors. And we start saying, well, I guess I could do without this. Well, maybe later they'll start to act like this. That is me cheating on me. And I cheat on myself to be with them. Be faithful to yourself first, so you know what fidelity really looks like.
I don't know where to go with that. Oh my God, that's so... I don't usually get stuck for words. But
sometimes we just sit with things.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I just need to sit with this for a second.
Yeah, and I want women to do that. What do you want in a relationship? What do you need? What kind of connection do you need? What kind of generosity do you need? What do you need? If you had this dream relationship, I'm not talking about material things, but when your emotional needs were met and you were experiencing safety, people don't realize we start negotiating. As soon as we have the opportunity to be back in a relationship, we'll start negotiating. Well, does that mean I'll just be by myself? I don't know. Maybe, but what if? What if? I never guarantee anyone that they won't be alone. I never guarantee anyone you'll definitely, if you do this, you'll attract your ultimate relationship and all. I don't know what the future holds. But why would that scare you? I want people to sit with their what ifs. What if you never get married? What if you never end up in the relationship you want? What if you never have children? What if that's a desire? Because until we are honest with what scares us about it not happening, the fear is what's driving us. And it's hard to choose love when you're operating in that level of fear.
As a therapist, what is often a response to that?
Sometimes people have a difficult time even embracing the idea of thinking through it because their identity and their expectations for life have been built around that. You grow up, you get married, you have children, this is how it works. And the idea of being alone or not picked or not good enough has been presented as a failure. And so we have to dig into that, because if your fear is, I'm not alone, I will be alone because I'm not good enough, even when you're in a relationship, you will carry that fear. So now you're afraid to lose the relationship that you got. And then you have children and you're afraid you won't be a good enough mother. You're afraid the children won't like you. Like, until we have that confidence, until we embrace who we are and love that and recognize that I can be enough by myself, we are going to be in a little bit of danger. Sometimes a lot of danger. Sometimes a lot of danger. We really have to face what scares us.
Okay, in the book,
Mm-hmm.
you talk about there's 3 things that you say that we need.
Mm-hmm.
And so love is one of them. So
Yeah.
we just spoke about that.
Yeah.
You say hope and faith.
Yes.
Now you also say without these 3, we have emotions that show up. And you say sadness, anger, and fear.
Yeah.
So I'd love to go through those 6 things and how if you don't have one, it leads into the other. Because what I'd really love to do is we've laid so much beautiful groundwork right now. And now if people don't have the thing that they wanted or that they'd wished and they lose one of these buckets, how that feeds into the sadness and fear, and then how that fear ends up keeping us stuck. So I'd love to kind of pull out and then for us to go over those if you don't mind.
So faith, whether it's religious or not, is simply defined as believing something's possible. And so once we lose touch with the idea of possibility, that does bring deep sadness. Faith connects us to other people, to our dreams, to our goals, because as long as we believe there's possibility here, we're able to move forward. When we are disconnected, that sadness comes in, that grief comes in, and it can become hopelessness. The opposite of faith is a form of sadness called hopelessness. And that brings us to hope, right? Hope comes next. Hope doesn't just say it's possible. Hope is how I feel when I believe it's possible for me. So people will watch a movie, watch a romantic story, see someone famous, find the love of their life and get married. And so they know it's possible, but then they may not feel like it's possible for them. And that's a different kind of feeling. I know it's possible to lose the weight. I know it's possible to get healthier, but I don't have hope that it's possible for me.
Why do we do that? What is happening there?
Sometimes we've failed a lot. And the pain of failure is more terrifying than the pain that I'm in right now. Failing again can scare us half to death. Trying again can scare us half to death. Feeling like we're out of time. That is one of the great things that drains hope. It's too late for me. We're out of time. Listen, I'm 50 years old and I just published this book and I've been dreaming about doing this forever. 50 years old. If you had told me when I was 25 that some of my dreams wouldn't come true until I was 50, I would have had a fit. I'd have arched my back like a toddler, just, I'd have been so, what? 50? And now I'm sitting here feeling like everything is timed so perfectly. I didn't become Dr. Anita till I was 35. I thought I would do that in my 20s as well. And if you told me at 25 it would be 35, I would have fainted. But everything is happening in such perfect timing in my life. And so I want to share that so that people can have some hope. It's still possible for you, whether it's the book, whether it's the career, whether it's the education, whether it's the relationship. If you are breathing, it's not only possible, it's possible for you. Have hope. Sometimes people just need to hear someone else tell their story to bring hope into their own story. So I wanted to share that. Hope is critical because when our hopes keep getting dashed, we get angry, we get frustrated. We experience something called goal frustration. I've been trying to get this goal met and I had hope. And when my hope keeps getting dashed, sometimes I get angry. And women often have a hard time tapping into their anger. They will press it down. I'm not angry, I'm fine. Because if I express my anger, I might hurt the relationship I'm in. Be angry. It's okay to be angry. And so we need to recognize it so we can express it so it doesn't keep eating my hope. Because it's hard to be hopeful and furious at the same time. If I don't transform that anger into some type of determination, which requires hope, that anger will stop me and eat me alive. Determination is me taking my anger and filling it back up with hope and moving forward. But if I just stay angry and don't reignite hope, I'll be lost and it will eat me alive.
So anger, you'd said so many of us women specifically find it very difficult to be angry. Explain why, and then how do we let that out? We'll stop there.
I think that women are fundamentally relational in a very special way. People explain it as evolution, people explain it as biology because we carry children. There's all kinds of ideas about it, but in every measure of emotional intelligence, women tend to excel. We tend to score higher on any assessment that is related to an emotional issue. So we have something special when it comes to emotion, and because of that, we have something special when it comes to relationship. And so many of us are afraid that anger will destroy relationship. If I let you know that I'm angry with you, it may put distance between us. They feel like anger is dangerous, it is not safe, and it isn't loving. But it is important. It's loving for myself for me to express when I'm angry, because I get angry when something valuable has been treated less than. If someone comes in my house and I have an expensive vase that I saved up for and just knocks it over, I'm going to be furious. That was valuable and you didn't treat it that way. But when someone comes and treats you with less value than you deserve, you're allowed to be angry about that. But we hold it because we don't want to lose the relationship. Sweetheart, if they're not treating you with the value you deserve, this relationship is already gone. So it's okay to express anger and then to set boundaries for what you need. Boundaries may leave me alone, only for a little while. People who understand and respect your boundaries will come into your life, but first you have to set them. And once I've set that safe space, then I can begin to hope for people who will come and treat me with the value that I need.
As a woman, that definitely resonated with me of like, oh yeah, you got to be the good girl. You
Right.
can't shout.
Be
You got to
nice,
be
be
clean.
polite.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'd love to ask you a question because I hear this quite a bit from actually some of my audience. As a Black woman, how do you feel about that? Because I know that people have pigeonholed and, you know, somewhat stereotyped Black women as being the angry Black woman. And obviously as a woman, I just feel that's completely unfair. So if you don't mind, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that specifically and how you're able to overcome that. Or not even overcome it, I would say like not let that impact how you show up. And if you're angry, yes, by damn it, I'm going to show my anger.
Absolutely. So every cultural group, every worldview has beliefs about emotion, about what emotions can be expressed, what emotions cannot be expressed, what's acceptable and when. And so we see that in different groups. We see typical expressions of Italian emotion. We expect Italians are known to be very emotionally expressive. And then we may look at some other cultures that are very stoic. And so our worldview influences that. Well, in my experience, among Black Americans, we are okay with the expression of certain emotions, including anger. But when we are interacting with other groups whose worldview says anger should not be expressed, then it is that worldview looking at us, and many white Americans have a worldview that say anger should not be freely expressed by women. And so then it's, these Black women are so angry, but what's really being said is, in our cultural worldview, women are not allowed to express anger, you're breaking the rules. And so I think a lot of white women are angry too. They've just been socialized that they're not allowed to express it. And in my cultural space, we express how we feel, and that's okay. And so I'm not going to allow somebody else's lens to cause me to repress an emotion that's healthy for me to express.
Wow, thank you for explaining that because, you know, like I said, I don't like, even though even on my show, I stereotype, I'm like, us women, right? So I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm always trying to think about what's the things that hold us back. And today we've really been going through the different types of emotions and things that are really holding us back from getting back up.
Yeah.
And a lot of women, just, you know, Black women that I just know, friends of mine, they tell me this of just like, well, I can't even do this because then I get labeled again. And so the result sometimes is let me hide, let me shrink.
So that I can fit into this space, so that I won't be stereotyped, so that I won't be dismissed. But I think it's beautiful that emotional expression, painful emotional expression, but also joy is a part of the culture that I come from. And if we're being judged by a group who says women don't express this kind of anger, then we're being measured by a different tape. And that is unfortunate, and it is awful, and it has caused problems. But I'm still going to express my joy fully, and I'm going to express my anger fully.
Hell yeah, yeah. Thinking about how if you don't, right, you said it earlier.
It's not healthy for me to hold it in. So I'm not going to be less healthy because you misunderstand me. Well, I am also going to express my joy fully. I'm going to laugh loud. I'm going to hug tightly. I'm going to love strong. And I'm going to let you know when I'm mad. I'm going to express all of my emotions fully. I'm going to be me. 100%.
I love that. All right, so people can be angry if they want to be angry. It's actually good for them.
It's actually good for us to express our anger. When we're holding it in, it actually diminishes our immune function. So we are more likely to get ill. Anger diminishes our immune function.
Holding it in.
Holding it in. So we need to express that energy and let it out of our nervous system because it actually depresses our immune system. It can disturb our sleep. And so now I'm not resting as well. Oh my gosh, high blood pressure is associated with carrying excess anger. I'm going to take care of my body by releasing the energy of my painful emotions. When we don't, we're storing that energy, and it comes out in health conditions. It comes out in lower back pain, in joint pain that is unexplained by other medical things, high blood pressure, strokes, diabetes, all associated with unexpressed emotional pain.
Sound like one of those commercials where it's like, if you don't, then the side effects
That's
are.
what we need. If you do not express your emotional pain, side effects include early death. And that is true.
Yeah, oh my God.
That is true. I'm not living a shorter life because I was afraid to let out the pain that was inside of me. And so, yes, let people know how you're feeling. But first, let you know how you're feeling and be honest about that so that you can continue living authentically.
Going to love is the third one that is necessary for us to have in our lives.
Love is required. And that's not just romantic love. But when we are in the presence of love, we feel safe. Love is the opposite of fear. We think that faith is the opposite of fear. Courage is the opposite of fear. Love. When I'm in the presence of someone who truly loves me, I feel safe. And that is why we need love. But many of us narrow that to romantic love. But it's not just that. Love is about acceptance. It's about a deep bond with another person. It's about emotional connection, emotional intimacy. So many of us are bad at that because we believe that emotional intimacy, which means I am open with how I feel, the vulnerable parts of me, and I share that with someone and I invite them in. Many of us think that's for our romantic relationships only. And so we don't develop deep emotional intimacy with our friends. But our friends are some of the greatest resources in the world. Let me tell you, my friendships are incredible. I am so blessed, but I took the risk to develop those friendships. I took the risk to ask myself, if I don't share this thing that I'm feeling or thinking with my good friend, why not? What am I afraid of? Am I afraid they'll look at me differently? Am I afraid that they won't trust me? Am I afraid that they'll look down on me? And then I just take the risk. I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to give this person the opportunity to be there for me. I'm going to give my friend the opportunity to be good to me. And when that happened, man, life-changing. But emotional intimacy and friendship, that's our training ground. And so then we find ourselves in romantic relationships and we have no idea how to do emotional intimacy because we never practiced it in our friendships. And our friendships are often a lot more enduring. And so it's important not to step into a romantic relationship and unplug from your friendships. Continue to cultivate the love in that space because very often it's some of the most dependable love that we'll ever find. And I'm not trying to depress anyone and say your romantic relationship, but that's a different kind of love. The love you have with your friends, the love you have with your family, the love you have with the people in your faith community, all of those are sources of deep, secure attachments. And we should cultivate that.
I actually think that's a good thing and not bringing someone down, to be honest, because I think it's a way of saying, like, you said it earlier, right? You're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
It's like, it isn't about, well, either you find a partner or you're screwed, right?
Right,
It's like,
exactly.
It's like, no, relationships are important. And so navigate and look around to see that the relationships that you're having and seeing where you're pouring yourself in and the importance of it. And so talk to me about loneliness. I mean, the stats that you say in your book, oh my God.
Loneliness, they have found, is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Extended periods of loneliness. And loneliness, of course, is different than being alone. Loneliness is a combination of like sadness and fear. Not only am I alone and feeling disconnected, that's sadness, but the fear that I don't belong anywhere, that I don't belong to anyone and with anyone. We need deep connection. And so loneliness says, I'm alone and I don't belong. That is so difficult for us. It actually undermines our health at the same level as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Your emotions are real need indicators. We must stop ignoring them and build community, build a sense of belonging with others. You don't have to wait to be picked.
Yeah, it reduces, so you said 15 cigarettes, which is
Isn't that mind-blowing?
Insane. And I think it's 25% risk of heart attacks and things
Absolutely.
like that.
Another reason why
25%.
increases your risk of heart attack by 25%. Emotions are bodily experiences. I cannot stress that enough because we have been trained to believe that it's a result of our thinking. I'm thinking this way, and so that's why I'm feeling this. But that is not the case. There was a huge shift in the neurobiological research about 15 years ago that brought to our understanding understanding clarity that emotions are bodily experiences that precede and inform our thinking. Your thoughts are the product of your emotions. And so just like a plant is in soil, imagine the heart is the soil, the plant is your mind. The plant doesn't make the soil. The soil makes the plant. The soil is where the plant draws water, where it draws nutrients, where it is rooted so that the wind doesn't blow it away. And in the same way, what's happening in your emotional life is the soil of your life. Your thoughts are the plants that are growing there. You cannot fix the soil with a plant that didn't grow there. Like it starts with how you feel. And so when you're thinking, how do I solve this problem? How do I keep this person from leaving me? How do I fix this relationship? And your mind is running. I want you to stop and say, what feeling has me asking these questions? I'm afraid. I'm lonely. I'm sad. And then address how you are feeling. You can't outthink your heart. You can't. You can't. And if you're using the word just, you're already in trouble.
Oh.
Just get up. Just stop. Just leave. By the time we say that to someone, they are usually in so much pain that we're just hurting them more. The question is, what do you need? What are you afraid of? How can I offer safety to you, my friend? How can I help you celebrate a small win that will move you forward? Because when we start justing, we're usually already in trouble. We feel like we've tried everything. And if I could just. But the question is, how are you feeling? And are there ways that we can get your needs for safety, connection, value met that will give you a little strength to take a baby step?
Okay, there's so much there, girl. Okay, first of all, what you were saying about feeling the body and how the soil, oh my God, I'm just going to say, put my hand up and be like, I absolutely would think it was the other way around.
Right.
But I love the idea of the soil being the body. And a great analogy or a story that you talk in your book is about when you were pregnant and the doctor's like, well, no, I'll tell you the signs. So if you don't mind talking to me about the emotional signposts.
So when I became pregnant, I was excited and then terrified because I'm like, I have to give birth, the whole labor and birthing thing. And everyone talks about how horrible it is, how painful it is. And so I started studying a natural childbirth method because I wanted to avoid some of the medical side effects of anesthesia. And in this study, I found out that there are certain emotional signposts that would tell you where you were in the labor and birth process. And I was blown away by that. And so I studied it and I began to watch where I was emotionally while I was in labor. Now I was at home. I'm calling the midwife. My child's father was calling the midwife saying, you know, she's in this position. She says she's feeling this pain. And they're like, oh no, she's not ready yet. My water hadn't broken. None of my contractions weren't close together, all the stuff that we hear. But emotionally, I was moving through the signs that I had studied. And so I kept saying, tell her I'm close, tell her I'm close. And she said, oh, it'll be hours. And I had the baby 20 minutes later because I had paid attention to where I was emotionally. So my body was actually sending me signals about how close I was to achieving holding my child in my arms. And so I want people to recognize that where you are emotionally is telling you what you need and how far you are in the process. And right before you're ready to push physically with birth is when you feel the emotion that says give up. There's this like snap moment. And so they taught me when you hear yourself say, I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore, you're there. And it was right. The moment I heard myself say, that's it, I can't take it anymore, I remember thinking, that's the feeling that says, I just made the point of turning the corner. And so when you're laying there crying, saying, I can't take this pain anymore, let that wail out. You're about to turn the corner. You're about to turn the corner. Trust that your emotions are carrying you to where you need to go. We have got to stop calling them problems. We have to stop repressing them, trying to control them. This pain is telling me that I need something. Fully experience that and go get that need met.
Oh my God, when I heard that story, I loved it so much because how often do we do that?
Right.
Where it's like you feel something, the expert, quote unquote,
right.
is saying, well, no. And so you push it down. And you don't, like, how many other women, if they hadn't have done what you've done and identified the goalpost or the signal post,
Right.
how many, well, the doctor said I'm fine.
Right. And then they don't trust their own
yeah.
bodies. We have been taught to trust everyone else except ourselves. And because emotions are bodily experiences, trusting your body includes being in touch with how you feel. And I cannot tell you how many women have sat in my office coming out of a toxic marriage, a dangerous relationship, saying, something told me. On my wedding day, I felt nauseous. When I decided to go into this relationship, I started getting sick. I developed PCOS. I started getting viruses. And I'm saying, so you're telling me your health has been declining physically since you went into this relationship? And they had never connected it. Your body is screaming at you, listen, listen. And you don't need to be able to explain it. If you're about to walk down the aisle next week and you feel like you're about to throw up, stop, sit down, and trust yourself. Our bodies send us signals when we're not safe, and we've been taught not to listen. Listen.
Do you know the psychologist Marielle Bouquet?
I don't.
Okay, so she was on my show, and she was telling me a story about how before, as she was studying psychology, she was engaged, and she had this rash, and it was all over her body. And as soon as she left him, the day she took the ring off, the next day the rash cleared up.
I believe it. I've heard stories like that over and over again. Our autonomic nervous system is where our emotional experiences begin. And that part of our nervous system is exactly what it sounds like. It's automatic. It's making your heart beat. It's the reason you're breathing right now. It's the reason your blood is circulating. We don't think our way into that. I can't think my way out of breathing right now. If I hold my breath too long, my body will knock me unconscious and start breathing again. And so my autonomic nervous system is running. One of the things that system does is scan the environment for cues of safety and danger. And when safety is absent, it will respond. And so it may speed up your heart or make you sick, or a rash comes out because it's the only way it can get the message to you, because you ignore sadness, you ignore fear. Oh, it's just jitters. I'm not going to let fear tell me what to do. No, that's your body saying you're not safe. Stop and check. Why am I not safe right now? And believe in the signals that your body is sending you, because there's truth there. There's absolute truth there. And sometimes we don't trust it because of our past. Well, I had a bad relationship before, and I don't want my fear from what happened before to come into the present. And so that's just my body being upset about the past. No, trust your body. If it smells something familiar, trust that. Now, maybe your body is responding extra big because of the past, but that doesn't mean it's responding wrong.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, how do you know the difference between an accurate response to a sign that you've seen versus out of fear and paranoia, so that you're almost projecting onto some a behavior onto someone that actually isn't true?
That is built in the idea that emotions are not trustworthy. If I am experiencing fear, that emotion says I am not safe. You need to give that some attention. Trust it. Now, the size of it may be bigger because of unresolved traumas from the past. But just because I'm responding big doesn't mean I'm responding wrong.
Because I have literally, I'm like trying to not make a grand statement, but a lot of my life I've thought, Lisa, you can't trust your emotions. They lead you astray. They make you behave in a way that you're ashamed, embarrassed. I love that you're shaking your head, ashamed and embarrassed about the next day. Like, so we should be trusting our emotions?
Yes, we should listen to them for the need they are indicating.
But what if it's impacted, let's say, by your hormones? So as an example, a lot of us women feel more emotional around the time of the month.
Absolutely. So because emotions are bodily experiences, I would say when an emotion arises that's painful and you need to address it, meet it in the body. We feel it in our body, but then we try to solve it with our mind. And so the most direct route to engaging your emotional experience is in the body. And so if I have an emotion that arises that's painful, that's strong, I'm going to stop. What do I need? Do I need to spend some time with a friend? Do I need to go and get a hug from someone? What do I need right now? And if it's extra big, then I'm going to ask myself, how deep is this need? Oh, well, it's that time of the month. At this time of the month, I have a deeper need. to spend time with my friends. I have a deeper need for connection. I'm more sad than usual, so my need is deeper. I don't choose to then ignore the need. I actually get it met. I cannot emphasize that enough. Your emotions are telling you that you have a need. Connection, safety, value. Get the need met. And maybe during this time of the month, I need extra safety. And that's okay. Maybe during this time of the month, I need an extra dose of feeling valued. That's okay. That's like saying during this time of month, I'm extra hungry. And you know what we usually do? We eat a little more. We eat a little more. I want you to equate your emotional pain with hunger. You don't judge yourself for being hungry. You get the need met. So in those experiences where you felt like your emotions led you to make a poor decision, I bet you were starving for a need that you had not gotten met in time. Maybe you were not getting your anger need met. You were not getting the value. You were holding the anger in. You weren't asking for boundaries. You weren't speaking up. And then when you lost your temper and blew up, it's because you were starving for value and you finally picked the fried chicken.
I get it.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because you're like, I blew up. You're starving to death. I cannot emphasize that enough. Get your need met regularly, and then you don't end up getting it met in a way that's not healthy because it overwhelmed you. But that doesn't make the need wrong. It means that you weren't taking good care of yourself along the way.
I'm having such a breakthrough moment right now.
I'm so glad.
Oh my God, like really? Because part of me, what I used to do is I'd be like, well, there's a reason. Like, Lisa, your emotions are leading you astray is what the words I would say to myself. You're having an emotion. I wouldn't ignore the emotion. I'll say you're having an emotion, but it's leading you astray. So instead of ignore it, you're saying let it in.
It's already there.
So it's already there.
It's already there.
Yeah.
I'm saying, what am I hungry for? What am I hungry for? Is this emotion saying I'm hungry for connection? Yeah. Am I hungry for value, to be seen, to be treated as worthy? Am I hungry for safety? Am I feeling unsafe? And how do I address how unsafe I feel?
Because what I would do is I would dismiss it.
Right.
So I'd be like, okay, there's always a reason, Lisa. So what's the reason? Okay, it's the time of the month, right? You're tired. Like I would, oh, it's your hormones. Okay, it's your hormones, so ignore it, Lisa. This emotion is actually overreacting. And so it's because it's the time. So I would ignore the feeling. And justify for it, and then to your point, eventually explode. All right.
It won't last forever, but it will wait forever.
Coming full circle.
And there it was. And there it was. So when you finally lose your temper, you probably should have said something months earlier. The first time you felt that thing. Wait, that felt disrespectful. And then you don't say anything. And then 20 times later you go, stop disrespecting me. And then you think, oh, I lost my temper. No, you were starving. We have got to change our view of our emotions. That pain that we feel, and again, the painful emotions, because we never have a problem with joy, happiness, peace.
No one sits and goes,
right, exactly. Joyful. Why am I so happy? I don't want this happiness to lead me astray. I don't want this joy to lead me astray. You know what I mean? It's just like, give me a break. It's the same thing with fear. If you're hiking here in California and 3 rattlesnakes come flying across the trail, you're not going to be like, now why am I feeling this fear? This fear's about to lead me astray. Like, you know that this is not safe. I need to get out of here. Right. But when we're in that relationship and everything's saying, I'm feeling terrified to walk down that aisle. I'm feeling terrified to say yes to this. We say, oh, this is leading me astray. But it doesn't lead me astray when a bear's chasing me, but it leads me astray. Your body knows when it's not safe.
Well, so let's talk about loneliness, because you actually mentioned it a bit earlier. And the one thing that you said, I didn't want to interrupt you at the time, but you said just because like you can feel lonely even when you're with other people.
You can, because you don't feel like you belong. Loneliness is the sadness we feel when we're disconnected, but also it's mixed in with some fear of I don't belong anywhere. And so I'm in a room full of people, but feeling like I don't belong here. I'm in a romantic relationship, but also feeling alone still. That means there's a sense that there's not a deep connection. There's not belonging. Belonging is the opposite of loneliness, the emotion of belonging. And we all know what that feels like. I'm loved, I'm accepted, I am valued, I click here. If I'm not in this space, it would change how other people's lives are. People, when they're lonely, feel like if I disappeared, it wouldn't change anything for anyone. But when we feel a deep sense of belonging, we know that our absence would matter. And so belonging is the opposite of loneliness. And it's very dangerous to feel like you don't belong.
And that's why, as we were talking about almost ignoring the emotion, when I think about being lonely and loneliness, how many people misconceive that to mean like, oh, you actually don't have anyone around. And so I'm just thinking about that person at home that's like, I feel so lonely, but my emotions must be leading me astray because I've got all these people around. I'm in this relationship. They actually love me, right? And so you justify the feeling that you end up ignoring it.
Yeah, you absolutely have to pay attention to it. What within me is still hungering for something? And hey, that therapy chair, I love it. I love it. I love it. We were talking earlier about both of us love Wonder Woman. We both love Wonder Woman. And my favorite thing about Wonder Woman, ever since I was a little kid, was her lasso of truth. When she got somebody and pulled that thing tight, they had to tell the truth. I feel like that's what therapists do. We get you in that room and I'm gonna get you and finally help you speak your truth about why you are struggling to feel like you belong. It could be the people you're in relationship with, but it could be some old pain that makes you afraid that you can't be accepted. Whatever it is, come on and get in the room and let's talk about it in a place that's safe so that you can hear your truth and then you can begin to build a new experience for yourself. You can plant something new, but first you have to take care of what's going on in the soil. Because I can't plant something new if the ground is hard and dry. And very often people try to plant something new when the ground's not ready. So we're saying our affirmations, we're writing down our positive affirmations, and we don't feel different. That's like throwing seeds on the ground that's hard and dry. The seeds are the words, those are the affirmations, but the soil isn't open, it's not ready. We need to go and work on where we are emotionally before we start trying to change how we think or how we speak. Let's go and see how we feel. Let's work through that.
Talk to me about the power of words.
Words are incredibly powerful. They are the seeds in the garden, but it's the seed-soil relationship that matters the most. And so that's why we don't believe everything we hear. People will say something and you're like, yeah, I don't believe that. Like you just don't. You don't have a reason, you just don't. That's like seeds falling on hard soil. The seed doesn't get into the ground. In order for the seed to get into the ground and grow, the soil has to have what that seed needs. There has to be a seed-soil match. When we speak words or words are spoken to us, there has to be a word-heart match. I'll give you an example. I was terrified that I would be a bad mom. I think a lot of women experience that. But because of some of my own childhood trauma, I was terrified I wouldn't be a good mom. And so when my kids were 5, 10 years old, I was working through that. If someone had looked at me and said, "You're doing a bad job. I don't think you're being a good mom," there would have been an immediate seed-soil match because emotionally, I was afraid of that. And so if someone criticized how I was mothering, those words would have gone into the soil and all kinds of bad fruit would have grown because emotionally, that's where I was. Today, I know that I developed into an amazing mom and my kids are amazing. And if someone said, I met your kids and I think you were a bad mom, I'd be like, you didn't meet my kids. Like, are you talking to me? Because there is nothing in my heart that's fertile ground for those words. There has to be a word-heart match, just like there has to be a seed-soil match. And so I could look at you all day and say, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, and it's not getting in because the soil, where are you emotionally? If you believe emotionally, if you're afraid that it's not true, emotionally, if there's so much sadness there that you're not able to open up to something like that, the seeds don't get in, nothing happens. Nothing happens.
But what about then on the reverse, when you have that fear and that your soil is fertile, and then you end up around somebody, whether it's in a relationship, romantic, and the wrong seed.
And it gets in and that's it. And some of us are still pulling up the weeds from seeds that were planted when we were 5 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old. And we have to go back and heal the ground. We have to go back and heal the ground. And that begins by acknowledging how we felt at the time and not being afraid to allow that emotion to be experienced and expressed so it can move out. But holding it in keeps the ground fertile. And you think by holding it in, you've gotten rid of it, but it's there. You don't have to feel your feelings for your feelings to be there. That's really important for people to recognize, but you do have to feel them to let them go.
So what do you do in those moments in real life, right? Where you're vulnerable, you're sensitive to something, but you're still the fertile, kind of using the soil analogy. You haven't shut down, which I love, right? You're still kind of, being open to other people's ideas and opinions. And then again, you end up meeting that wrong person. In real life, how do you start to identify that the fuel for the soil is actually toxic and it's going to poison it and it's going to bring weeds instead of beautiful flowers? And then what do you do before the weed starts to grow and grow and grow? Like how, in real time, how do you actually do that? You're on your way to a hot date, you got your sexy pants on and you feel great. You eat the bread, you drink some wine, just living your freaking best life. When suddenly, stomach pain starts to strike. Guys, I freaking get it. I've literally felt your pain. Like literally, stomach cramps, bloating, gas, discomfort. These are all freaking signs that your gut is saying something isn't right and your confidence takes a freaking nosedive. But thankfully, we can fix a lot of these issues, guys, with today's sponsor, Viome, and their simple at-home gut health test. Simply collect and ship your sample and you'll get results in 2 to 3 weeks via the app. See your 20 integrative health scores that foods are good and bad for your biome and so much more. My homie, don't let an imbalanced gut keep you from feeling like a badass. Viome is offering $110 off your test right now. Take control of your health today with Viome.
So I want every woman right now to start developing a habit of checking in with herself honestly every day. Because when we are so disconnected from where we are and how we're feeling, things can sneak in, and by the time we realize there's a problem, it's a big problem. But if every day you're journaling, you're stopping to think, what am I feeling today? What's going on in my body? Is my stomach tight? Is my chest feel tight? Am I scared, anxious, sad, angry? What am I feeling today? What do I need? When we're constantly caring for ourselves in that way, when something comes along that works against that, we'll notice it quickly. We'll notice it quickly. So that's self-awareness. Self-awareness is your first line of defense against toxic connection, toxic relationships, dangerous words, painful new beliefs being planted. Are you aware of what's going on inside of you? And if something starts to shift or challenge that, send up a flare quickly.
I love that strategy because there are moments, you even said earlier, what if it's your mom? Like there are people in your life that maybe have been there for so long, you literally don't, you miss the weeds and think that they're flowers.
Yes,
right?
indeed.
Because you're like, no, growing up, my mom told me that was a rose. So surely that's a rose. And you're like, no, that's
and you're like,
weed.
no, it's a Venus flytrap and it's definitely gonna eat me. Right.
That's a great
100%. You have to start by getting in touch with how you feel.
Yeah.
I say to women every morning, or men as well, every morning when I wake up, I open my eyes, the first thing I do is close them again and scan my body. How am I feeling? What's my body doing? Do I feel like little butterflies because I'm excited about today? Or is my stomach tight because I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't want to start my day? Right in those moments, spend 60 seconds being still. Where am I emotionally? And then address that. What do I need? Maybe do some journaling, go for a walk, spend some time in your spiritual space, pray, so that you're able to take care of what's needed before you jump into your day. And that kind of self-awareness will blossom all over the place. Let's say you're in this great mood and you start noticing every time I have this phone call with this particular person, suddenly I feel differently. I don't feel as good. But when you're not paying attention to your emotions, you don't notice. And so you'll start to be aware of the people, places, and things that affect you negatively. And you can begin to distance yourself. But if you're not self-aware, you often don't notice something until it's massive. And then it's almost too late. Now you got to do major damage control.
Yeah, I mean, before we started rolling, I told you, but for 10 years, I wasn't even looking at myself. For 10 years, I wasn't asking myself any of this. So that's why I'm such a, I love, like, I geek out over the strategies and tips and ideas because I spent 10 years not doing any of that. And so the idea of, hey, you just spend 60 seconds every morning, that doesn't feel daunting.
It does.
Which I actually
love.
what?
For some people it does.
Really?
But do it anyway.
Wow.
For some people it does. And so set a timer if you have to, because a lot of us don't know how to be still. I don't want people to give as much attention to slowing down as I do want to see them give more attention to being still.
Oh, what's
A lot of times people like, well, I'm doing so much and I know I feel overwhelmed, so I need to do less of something. Start by doing more of being still. 60 seconds in the morning is tough for some people, but I want to challenge them to do it. It's a stillness. I'm just going to sit here and be still. Yes. That moment when you're reaching for your phone to start scrolling, don't. That's a moment for you to be still. You're distracting yourself from something and you don't know what it is and you don't give yourself time to find out what it is. Sometimes when I'm working, I will put a Post-it on my phone that says, and I'll write on the Post-it, why? So that if I reach for my phone, the first thing I see is why. And it's just like, yeah, why? And I'll put it back down. But then instead of getting back to work, I'll sit there for a minute. What moved inside of me that I wanted to be distracted from that made me grab this phone? I want to know what that was. Because whatever it is that we're avoiding that makes us not want to be still is running our lives. 100%. And so be still. It will change everything. Your awareness of how you're feeling and what's going on will increase. And you will know when you're not aligned with how you want your life to feel. We spend so much time saying, what kind of life do I want to live? I want you to ask yourself, how do I want my life to feel?
I love that. And I love the why thing. Like how often, we don't even ask ourselves. It's like, oh, well, I was in it. Were you actually just checking your phone? Or was it a moment of, oh, wow, I'm dealing with something very stressful and I need a moment of distraction?
Yep. And it happens so fast. I mean, if you've ever, and we all have, caught yourself scrolling and forgot why you even had your phone in your hand in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
What were you trying to escape from? It happens so quickly. It's subconscious. But then sit there for a moment and say, did I just hit a point when I'm writing? Did I just hit a hard point in my writing and I got a little anxious and then I wanted to distract myself? Well, then stop and say, what's scaring you right now, Anita? What's scaring you right now? And be honest about that. Allow that feeling, allow that awareness, and then I return to work. It's so important for us to be willing to do that. But we are obsessed and addicted to actually avoiding pain. And we need to be able to tap into those hunger pangs. What do I need right now?
Yeah, how often have you picked up your phone to text someone or do something, and then you end up scrolling on Instagram?
20 minutes
and I'm like,
later.
how did I get... I didn't even text the person.
Right.
I'm like, I'm down a rabbit hole on Instagram and had no intention. And so that idea of, well, hang on, why am I doing this? It never occurred to me. I always thought, I'm ADHD is normally what I kind of tell. You're ADHD, Lisa, you get
could
distracted.
be, but double check.
Yeah, but I think there is reasons behind it.
Yeah.
It's the thing, because here's the thing with even ADHD, and I'm not a doctor and I don't know this, but I've just heard of like ADHD doesn't mean that you cannot focus.
Sometimes you hyper-focus.
Sometimes I hyper-focus.
Right, exactly.
So if I'm being distracted, I'm clearly not hyper-focused. Why am I doing distraction versus the hyper?
Right.
Like almost then even compare the two.
What's got me uncomfortable?
Yeah.
What's making me uncomfortable that I'm trying to get away from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me about spiritual bypassing. So I found this super powerful. Just another reason why I love your book and everything that you do is you really just say it for what it is. So talk to me about that and what is it and then what should we do?
Yeah, so spiritual bypassing is a term that was created by a Buddhist psychologist who noticed that the people in his Buddhist community were trying to use their meditation practices and other spiritual practices to avoid their emotional pain. They were trying to use their spiritual tools to bypass the pain that they were in. And that is never healthy. And many of us do that, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, sometimes mindfulness. We're like, okay, I'm sad. I'm going to go meditate. I want to engage mindfulness. Hold on. First, you need to express, experience, engage the pain you're in. And then we move to the thing that waters us, refills us. But we cannot skip our pain for any reason, including using spiritual excuses. And so spiritual bypassing is when we try and use those spiritual practices to not feel, or we try to get someone else to do it. Someone comes to me and says, I say, how are you doing? I feel so sad today. And if I said, oh, well, let me pray for you. It's like, they didn't ask me to pray for them. They were expressing emotional pain, and I didn't choose to meet them in an emotional space. I went to something spiritual instead of meeting them where they were. And so many times we think that that means we're having faith, but we are actually trying to use faith as a Band-Aid because we don't have any tolerance for discomfort. we must increase our tolerance for discomfort, ours and other people's, because we let people down. They're asking you for emotional comfort and you're jumping all over the place. And sometimes we do it with other things too. We can call it positivity bypassing for people who aren't particularly spiritual. Well, it's gonna work out. Just think positive. Just keep going. Don't let the negativity get you. And it's just like, my father just died. I need comfort, and don't let the negativity get you. It's like, what are you doing? And so we have to be careful with that toxic positivity, because that's another way of bypassing pain. But the pain will still be there, mine and other people's.
I think like that with gratitude, and for myself, because I used to use gratitude when
Big
I
time.
first married my husband. I was like, I'm so grateful. It's like, no, I'm not living the life. You know, I want to make movies and I've got these big dreams, but I'm so grateful. I'm living in America. I've got a husband that loves me. I've got a roof over my head. I'm so grateful. That was year 1. By year 8, when I was doing something that I really didn't want to do, and I was miserable and I was unhappy, the voice had turned into, how ungrateful are you if you complain? You have a roof over your head. You have a husband that loves you. And so these words that used to be beautiful are now keeping me where I am, because I'm like, well, how ungrateful am I if I speak up?
Right, and now there's something wrong with me, and I need to fix that. All of us probably had an experience when we were kids where our parent was asking us to eat something that we didn't want to eat.
Yes.
And what is their response? There are kids starving in this country. There are kids starving in this country, and you don't want that. And did that ever change how we really felt about the food in front of us? No.
That's so true.
We do that to ourselves. I should just be grateful. I should just be grateful. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. Gratitude only works when it's authentic. And also, it's not all or nothing. I can be grateful for X and also be deeply dissatisfied about Y. And I am allowed to revel in the joy of what I'm grateful for and also address the pain in an area where I feel unsatisfied. It's not all or nothing. And that's one of the challenges we have with dealing with emotional pain. We think if we're sad, I gotta stop being sad because I am totally sad. Well, I'm sad about this, but I'm also happy about that. I am scared of this, but I'm also joyful about that. And so I'm gonna revel in my joy, my happiness, my peace over here, and I'm gonna be honest about my sadness, my anger, my fear over here. Same thing with that garden. This area of the soil is in great shape and I have stuff growing, but there's an area over there that I need to dig up and turn over the soil and fertilize so that that area will be healthy as well. We can be in more than one position at the same time. We can feel more than one thing, and we can have more than one experience. Gratefulness is not the Band-Aid to stop us from feeling pain ever. And feeling pain doesn't mean we're not grateful. I can be grateful for these things and in pain about that. That's okay. It's not all or nothing.
You have a quote in your book that says, prayer is a weapon, therapy is a strategy.
Indeed.
What do you mean by that?
So I grew up in a very faith-drenched space. My parents are pastors. They've been pastors for 48 years. They're in their early 80s and they're still pastors to this day. And then my Christian faith is extremely important to me as well. And so one of the spiritual practices in many religions is prayer. But I grew up in a space where prayer was considered the end-all and be-all when it came to issues that are linked to our mental health. And so, hey, I'm really sad, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, pray about it. And so we didn't have encouragement to go to therapists and work on it. And so I wanted to make it clear to people who grew up in spaces like mine or for whom faith is super central, that therapy is not a contradiction to your spiritual practices. They serve different and equally important space. So prayer is a weapon. That's how I was raised. This is one of the ways we can fight battles with our spiritual weapons. And also, therapy is a strategy, because when I'm in a war, I need weapons and strategies. You're not in a war just because you're fighting. You actually have a strategy in order to be successful. And so sometimes it does feel like we are in a war for our mental health. And so I want people to use their spiritual weapons like prayer, or maybe reading their sacred text, or going to services in their faith community. But also there are some strategies: exercise, eating well, going to therapy, taking medication. All of those things matter. And so they're not mutually exclusive. They both support. Prayer can be a weapon and therapy is a strategy. They're not in competition. There are 2 ways for you to get better.
I love that. How much of mental health is a taboo still in the faith-based?
A lot.
Really?
A lot. And that's because, and there are some good reasons for that. And I don't like it when people say, oh, well, it's because people who are super religious are not paying attention to science or they're not thinking. But for a long time, the field of psychology was pretty antagonistic toward religion. In fact, psychologists have been found to be the least religious profession. And so less religious than doctors and dentists.
Whoa.
And part of it is because as the theories were developing and the field was developing, there was a negative view of religion in the field. And so when you have a profession that kind of sees religion as undermining mental health, now that's not the case now, but for years that was true. And so, yeah, if you're a person of faith and you're dealing with a profession who looks down on faith, yeah, that's a bad match. But we've come a long way. And so now in the mental health profession, we have recognized how important spirituality is, how important faith is, that it actually does boost mental health when it's applied in a healthy way. And so it's a safer place than it used to be for people of faith. And so I think it's important to point out that it's gone both ways. And so many people in highly religious spaces have felt that the therapy room wasn't a safe place for them, that their faith would be challenged, that the counselor would say, oh, that's wrong, you don't need to believe that, and that they would challenge their faith. And so there was this sense that it wasn't a safe place. But it's become a lot safer, and I encourage people of faith to head right on into that therapy room and use that strategy to get better, because we're all human. And there are some things we have in common no matter what we believe. And our emotional experiences is one of those things.
I love that. And reading your book, I mean, you know, it's you have some scriptures in there and you're very faith-based, but you've also then got the science. And that's why I really loved the way that you were able to blend them together and have beautiful stories. And it was so well put. And then you have now started to highlight how, at least in my world, how much there has been this stigma and that it's actually not true. And then how do we help more people see mental health and healing from mental health is a good thing instead of a bad thing. And, you know, we all kind of say now, well, if you had a broken leg, of course you wouldn't judge me for going to the doctor.
Right.
And so I love that you're really working on knocking down that stigma so that more people can hopefully get as much help as possible. And I didn't realize, it didn't even dawn on me that if you were faith-based and going into a therapist's office, that you would be fearful that they would try to diminish or challenge your beliefs.
Perhaps challenge the moral boundaries that you've decided that you want to have for your life. And it's not the case. And if someone is challenging your value systems, wherever you get them from, in a way that feels disrespectful, then that therapist is out of line. And I would say that anyone should walk out of that office, whether it's their religious values or whatever. If you're saying, these are my core values, these are my boundaries that I'd like to live with my life, and they're challenging you instead of supporting you to do what you need to do in a healthy way, you may need to walk away from that. Now, of course, there are exceptions. There are religious spaces that are abusive. And I'm not here repping a cult. You know, if someone's emotional health is being diminished in a religious space, that's something that needs to be explored, because sometimes religion is used as a weapon against people. And I want to acknowledge that. People have been hurt and they've experienced abuse in religious spaces. That's not okay. But if you have a healthy faith, then it's okay for you to hold on to that and also go to therapy as well.
And that's what I was going to say. It also does happen on the other side though, right? The amount of times I've heard about friends of mine and women that have said, oh, I think my doctor, whether it was a medical doctor that was, you know, looking at the body for, you know, hormones, or just a psychiatrist or a therapist who they felt like they were being gaslit or
Disregarded, disrespected, not heard.
Yeah. And look, I'm 44, so I grew up in a world where I was taught, oh, if they're a professional, you listen to them.
The authority figure is always correct.
Yeah. Don't push back. They know better than you. And the idea that someone knows better about your body than you, or your values better than you, is crazy to me now as an adult. But to think about the young generation that is believing all of that.
Yeah, you have inside of you what you need to get well. When you partner with someone, a coach, a therapist, a ministry, they should be helping you uncover and bring to the surface the things within you that you have to get well. It's not about them having the power and you need them to fix you. And if they are leading you in that way, you're with the wrong professional. Find someone who wants to partner with you on your journey to wellness, not control you.
in your book, you talk about self-love. And I actually have a list that you said of like what includes what self-love needs. And I'd love you to break these down for us.
Yeah.
Okay. I would treat myself with kindness even when I let myself down.
Yes. We try so hard to be perfect. And even in all of us working on ourselves and these healing journeys that we're on, we sometimes hide perfectionism in a healing journey. I have to get better. I have to get over this. I have to be self-aware. I have to express my emotions properly. Like it becomes perfectionistic. I need you to love yourself when you're imperfect. I need you to be kind to yourself when you fail yourself. That's love. Unconditional love isn't proven until the conditions are broken. You know what I mean? Until there feels like there's a reason not to love yourself, that's your moment. And so I want us to be kind to ourselves at all times and recognize we are people, not projects. So much of our healing journeys have become these projects where I'm just something that needs to be fixed. I'm a person, not a project, and I love me. And even when I fail my highest standards, I'm still worthy of my own love. And if I don't believe that, I won't let anyone else love me. Very
How do you
important.
then start to believe that if your entire life you haven't? What type of things, because it becomes habitual.
Sure.
Right? In that moment, you're beating yourself up. It's like, oh, I made a mistake. See, you're no good. I knew you wouldn't, you're no good or you're not worthy. How do you start to unwire that habit that automatically in that moment you go to beating yourself up?
Remember that first moment as a child that someone made you feel awful for making a mistake. That someone made you feel awful for not being perfect, for falling short of some standard. I need you to go back and get that child. Because that critic, whether it was a parent, a teacher, a bully, someone who made you feel like you failing or making a mistake or not being perfect was unacceptable, their voice has become your inner voice, and now you're doing it to yourself. I want you to go back and rescue that child. Find a picture of yourself at that age. Put it on your bathroom mirror. Put it on your refrigerator and remind yourself to be as kind to yourself as that child needed right now. Would you say what you're saying to a child? Then don't say it to yourself. If you saw a child make a mistake and you would say, that's not acceptable, you need to get it right, you know you wouldn't. Then don't do that to yourself. A lot of times we need to go backwards and heal the child inside of us. We have absorbed the critical voices of our childhood and made that voice our own. I want to reverse that. Speak to yourself with love. It works. You can't hate yourself into being better. You can only love yourself better.
Wow, that hit me. You can't hate yourself.
You cannot hate yourself better. You cannot fuss yourself better. You can't be angry at yourself enough to make yourself better. You can only love yourself better. Shame is not fuel for change. It will only stagnate you. And we use shame to try and fix ourselves. Oh, you shouldn't be like this. Oh, this is terrible. And all it does is keep us in the cycle of what we hate. You cannot hate yourself better. You can only love yourself better.
I don't know what's going on today, but I'm feeling like I'm really getting emotional over the things that you're saying.
That's
like, I feel
good.
Like
What feeling did that bring for you?
As soon as you said, like, who's that child? Because as I'm saying, like, oh, we beat ourselves up. I do that to myself
like,
all the freaking time. And so as soon as you said, go back to the child, I was like, oh my God, yes.
Where'd you go?
I went to my dad, who is he went from nothing. Like nothing, hole in the floor, mountains of Cyprus, had 0 pennies to his life, worked his way so hard to having a roof over his, building a house for his kids. And he was very, time is money, come on, you made a mistake, sort it out. Like it was very much like this because that's how he lived his life because it was life or death for him growing up. Like it actually was life or death for him. And so that echoed to me. But I live in modern society, and so my dad's screaming at me for getting out the car too slow, or he's having a go at me for making a mistake or spilling something. But my dad was very loving. So it's not like I have any bad feelings towards my dad, but that's exactly where it took me.
But you absorb the voice. And I heard you say this earlier. So when I have an emotion, what is this? What am I feeling? What do I need to do? How do I take care of it? You just said that earlier. And so that rush to solve the problem, don't slow down to feel harsh. And it is a harshness. that you're still carrying. And I love that you said, I don't have any negative feelings towards my dad, because often we think it has to go with that. There had to be something terrible. It doesn't, it's not a judgment against the voice, but if we see that it's turned on us in a way that is less than embracing, less than loving, unnecessary, we need to go ahead and exchange that for something else.
How often do we not want to go back to the past because we don't, like I was saying, my dad was the most loving, giving human on the planet, but he also was a very, come on, let's go, like critical person. He was very critical. And so almost even saying that out loud, I don't want to diminish how much love and attention
Right, you feel a little guilty, right?
I feel really guilty right now, like saying this, really guilty.
Oh, thank you for being so open, because this is going to help so many people. We have to allow our parents to be humans so that we can allow ourselves to be humans. I can look back and say, my mom or my dad or my grandmother or my caregiver did all these great things. And also there's this one thing that has been problematic for me. And that's okay to say. It doesn't mean I don't love them. It means that I am mature and grown up and can see them as a whole human being. But as long as they have to be perfect and have no imperfections, then I must be perfect and have no imperfections. And that's not fair to anyone, not to them, not to me. And so it's okay. Hey, this was something that didn't end up going so well for me. Doesn't mean that I don't love him. Doesn't mean I don't love her. It means that there's an area where I can have an even healthier life.
And now you've given me a tool and strategy to be able to use, because I am all about improvement. Not just like because I want to say that I improved, but like I actually have goals. I know what gets in the way of my goals. And so like my emotions get in the way. That's why I think I got emotional actually.
Yeah.
Because it was the realism of, well, no, actually, Lisa, what is this for you? And then now you've given me a tool. If I could have a photo of myself at like 7 years old, and I'd probably put it in my phone as like as a, on a favorite, so it's an easy to access. And so going back to your advice, every time I start to want to be mean to myself instead of kind, I'm going to pull up that photo and say, now what would I say to her?
Yep. What would I say to her? Would I say this to her?
Yeah, no way.
And
Lisa,
no way. No. But when we're not aware of that, it also can hurt us if we're parents, aunts, godparents, that very often we will treat the child in front of us the way we treat the child within us. And so it's really important for us to correct the relationship we have with our childhood self, because we will treat the child in front of us the same way.
That was just the first one of your self-love.
There we go.
You also say I am another sign for self-love is being able to say I am both imperfect and capable of growth.
As we just said.
Yeah.
That I don't have to be perfect. I can grow, but I love myself now. If I only love myself when I'm perfect, I don't actually love myself at all.
Because here's the funny thing. You know how Brené Brown says about vulnerability, that we hate ourselves being vulnerable, but we admire it in everyone else? It's almost the same, that we absolutely know that no one's perfect, but yet somehow we hold ourselves to a standard of perfection, or a relationship of perfection, or a career of perfection. If we've studied this, then you have to be perfect. You have to love it. You have to do well. You've got to get the A star.
Yep. It's so good for us to just switch the seat. If this was my good friend, how would I speak to them? Would I still love my good friend? Of course I still love my friends, even when they're not perfect. I know they're not perfect. That's what makes love so special. It's if I only love for perfection, I don't love. Love is about safety. We feel safe when we're loved. So that means that I need love when I don't feel safe, that something's wrong, something's not perfect, I super need it. And so, it's not about perfection, because we'll never get there.
Yeah.
We'll never get there. And when we slow down and realize, hey, these feelings are still here, and we take care of ourselves, that's a way of loving ourselves. It was loving of you to pause and say, wait, I'm feeling something now, and I'm gonna stick with this. And I hope, and you might not have the words yet, but make sure you dig into what those feelings were. What did you feel like when some of those words were hitting you? Was it sadness? Was it a little bit of fear? Was there ever a little bit of anger, like frustration? What were the feelings? Because when we skip that, it's dangerous.
Anxiety, maybe.
Okay.
And I didn't want to disappoint.
So then look back, how can you see those themes even in your adulthood?
Oh yeah, they're everywhere. I don't want to disappoint anyone.
Right, and so for those 8 years you mentioned, that's what you were probably trying to do. And then you hit a big blow that made you have to shift. But now you can have the awareness. Am I falling back into this fear of disappointing someone? Am I falling into this anxiety? And manage it each day and meet your needs so that you don't find yourself 8 years from now having missed something else, but you waited till it was big to get your attention.
Yeah. And I'm
Every day.
such in a service of growth. I don't want to, what is the phrase? Like, I don't want to miss the trees for the forest.
Yes, exactly. I think they say we want to miss the forest for the trees.
Yeah, like the
but
one or the
either
other.
way.
Yeah, you get me at home.
Yes, but we need both. It's so true because, again, it goes back to how do you want your life to feel? And when we are ignoring our needs for connection, for value, for safety, that unconditional love, we often achieve our goals. And then we still have emptiness. And we're wondering why. I thought when I achieved this, I would feel this. We weren't taking care of ourselves along the way. So I want people to think about their goals, but also how they want their life to feel and pull some of that in every day. Stop deferring joy, peace, rest, happiness for when the goal is met. Live your life today, right now, so that you're experiencing that satisfaction. Sometimes keeping those needs met will even clarify or change your goals. Because your goal may have been to feel a certain way. And once you recognize that you can cultivate those emotions on your own, you might not need the goal for the feeling. It may lead you into a different space, one that is authentically satisfying to you.
The defer thing really hit me actually, because I think a lot of us do that.
100%.
And I used to use it with confidence. Like people say, oh, when I have the confidence, and I said, I'll fill in the blank. When I have the confidence, I'll do this. And I'm like, what if the when never came? And so to your point of stop deferring it, because what if it never came?
It may never come. And then you have not enjoyed your life. Yeah. Life isn't a series of goalposts. It's a quest for satisfaction. That's something we can have every day. Balance, you can't hardly have. People always talk about work-life balance and family life balance. Balance is like almost impossible. There's so many demands. We can't give equally to all these different things. So there will be time in life where I'm feeling more to my family, less to my job, more to my job and less to my fitness. I don't know, all these things are happening. But how satisfied do you feel at the end of the day? If you're not cultivating a life where you feel a sense of satisfaction each day, you're missing it. You will achieve the goal and still not have the satisfaction.
Ooh.
Satisfaction is a lifestyle, not a destination. You will not be healthy if you don't cultivate satisfaction daily.
Oh, I love that. Satisfaction is a lifestyle.
It is. It's the way I want my life to feel. And am I engaged? Did I end my day today feeling satisfied? And if that's not there, you're missing something that needs to be addressed.
Lisa Nichols, I heard her speech, she's a motivational speaker, and I heard her maybe like 8 years ago say, I don't seek balance, I seek harmony. And that always
very similar.
stuck
Yes.
with me. So when you're saying it, it's like, but I think when people are fighting for something that they think that they should have, you end up not getting it, and then you feel a failure, and then all the emotions come and everything that we've been speaking about.
Yeah, and if it's deeply satisfying to you, that can get rid of the FOMO. You know, like, well, I should be doing this. You know what? I'm so deeply satisfied in this area. It's okay for me to stay right here. And I don't have to be anyone but me. You know, we listen to people who motivate us, who teach us, who train us, but take what works for you, but don't let their voice drown yours out.
All right, well, here you go. It kind of goes to what we were saying earlier about imperfection. I don't mind if other people see my imperfections.
Let me tell you. There is nothing that I am happier about that I've developed in my life than shame freedom. Shame freedom is the key. And if I even sense that something is bringing me shame, I want to talk about it to one of my friends or my therapist immediately. Shame freedom is the key because it's how we feel about ourselves that's really the problem. I'll use this example. I did my first 4 years of my career working exclusively with adult survivors of child sexual abuse. And greatest privilege of my life to work with people who are willing to let me walk them through something so difficult. And one of the things that I would do, I did it in groups. And I had a t-shirt that I would put up in the group that said, I was sexually abused across the front. And so when everyone came in for the first group, they'd see this t-shirt and they're just like...
Is it like hanging up?
Yeah, I'd have it hanging up in the front of the room. And I'd say, what would it mean to you to walk out of the door right now with this t-shirt on and just walk into the street, go to the mall, go home, go to your family reunion? And they're just like, no way, I would never do that. I would feel embarrassed. I would feel dirty. I would feel all these things. And I said, that is what we're here to work on. Not how other people feel about it, but how you feel about it. Because you assume that other people are going to feel the way you feel. So let's work on it. If you were going to share your story and I asked you to share it and you said, I have something really awful to tell you. This terrible thing happened to me. The person listening would be like, oh my God, what? But what if you said, hey, I want to tell you this story about how I had this amazing journey that started off hard and brought me to another place? Then that person would be like, great, tell me. They are responding to what you're bringing. And so as we release shame, we teach people how to feel about what we're sharing by the way we present it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so how I feel about the divorce, how I feel about motherhood, how I feel about my body, how I feel about the way I look, I present that. And then you meet me there. The work is mine. And so once I have worked through where I'm at, we're good. I'm not afraid for you to know things about me that people would call vulnerable. I'm happy to share it with you. Maybe it'll help you.
So the way that you talk about the shame that maybe you're feeling, the way that you express it will then impact how the other person sees you.
Yeah.
So even if you're feeling some shame, but you say it in an empowering way.
No, I'm saying don't feel the shame.
Oh.
I'm saying how you feel will influence how you talk about it.
So how do you actually then let go of the shame? Because
Yes.
I hear you. I would love to find shame freedom, girl.
And of course, there is
to.
not one immediate click.
Sure.
Sometimes, but I want you to start by thinking about how you would approach someone who shared that with you. If someone came to you and said, I've had this secret forever and I just want to get it off my chest. When I was a kid, my stepfather sexually abused me. Or I'm feeling like I look too fat to go outside. How would you respond to that person? Start responding to yourself that way. Start recognizing that the way you feel toward that person is how you can feel about yourself. I want you to turn that emotion back toward yourself. Does that make sense? And so I'm getting older. I said I'm 50. And a couple of years ago, I started catching myself being critical of my physical appearance in a way that I never had in my life. The idea that I was turning 50, it was so I'm looking in the mirror is that a gray hair? Is that a wrinkle? And it started escalating where I knew I'm looking in the mirror going, Anita, you are overemphasizing this stuff. But instead of saying, you look absolutely great, I said to myself, how do I feel when I see an older woman? How do I feel when I see those wrinkles? How do I feel when I see an older woman who has gray hair and she's wearing it? And when I see that, I think wisdom. I think strength. Okay, look in the mirror until you let that feeling that you have for someone else overwhelm you. Does that make sense? So instead of saying, I look great, I don't look old, I start saying, what would it mean for me to look like that? I'm gonna feel the way about myself that I feel about them.
That's genius. So now I've got a question for you. What if the thing that you are shameful of, you do judge other people?
Well, now I got an issue with you.
Come on, let's talk about that. But let's say, let's say your entire life you've been told being old means that you're useless, fill in the blank of all the negative words you can think of.
Right.
And as a belief, you've just been taught that and you really believe it. And so that's probably why you have the shame. You have the shame because you believe that the X, Y, and Z is quote unquote bad or whatever. So how do you let go of the shame if you do see it in other people and you do judge them for it?
We're back to the original question that I asked you before about the critical voice. Where did it start? Go get that child. Where did that shame start? Go get that child. If you are surrounded by that kind of shame, it's just everywhere on every side, and you know it and you're aware of it because it's hurting you, because it's uncomfortable, you didn't create that. You picked that up in your childhood. Go get that baby.
So if you feel the shame and you look at somebody else and you're like, well, I'd never say that to them, then that mirror that you can work through.
That's an opportunity to start there. If you wouldn't say it to them, don't say it to yourself. But really stay with the emotion. What am I feeling when I see this person? And now how do I bring that emotion close to myself? And if I can't do that, if it's hard for me to do that, if as soon as I start bringing the compassion near me, it disappears. When I start to feel the love and bring it near me, it disappears. Go back and get that child. When did she find out? When was she told she wasn't worthy? She wasn't good enough. She wasn't pretty enough. She wasn't smart enough. She wasn't confident enough. When did it happen? Whose voice have you absorbed and made your own? even if that was someone you trusted, even if it's someone you love, you're allowed to excise that part out of your psyche. Go get that little girl.
Dr. Anita Phillips, I could honestly talk to you forever.
Thank
Your
you.
book was so beautifully dense with incredible tips, takeaways, stories, analogies. I mean, we've only just touched the surface, but if people want to dive in and go deeper, where can they find you and your amazing book, The Garden Within?
The Garden Within, where the war with your emotions ends and your most powerful life begins, is anywhere you get books, and I hope you enjoy it. And I would encourage people to try the Audible version. I read this myself, and it was so important to me to read it, and I was excited to be able to pour my heart into the words. And so, yeah, written, print copy, Audible, anywhere you get books, go for it.
If you want to learn how to calm down your emotions, keep cool when disrespected, and shut down rude people, then keep watching. How do we control being too empathetic? When I'm too empathetic, I can be manipulated or mistreated or used by someone else. All right, I'm just gonna freaking say it. Why on earth do you think that being too empathetic is actually what's leading you to being manipulated or mistreated? Like, I actually don't necessarily know if you've actually identified the right issue, because I think empathy is tremendously important. I think that that is what makes you you. That is so freaking special, girl. Don't you ever, 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 ever dare dismiss that beautiful part of you. I think being empathetic makes us who we are as human beings. The fact that I'm empathetic is exactly what allows me to overcome all my freaking insecurities to step in front of the camera in the first place. It was the empathy that I had for the other people in the world that was suffering from the same things that I did, that forced me to overcome my own freaking insecurities, to overcome that bitch in my head that wants to tell me I'm no good. It was the fact that I'm empathetic towards people struggling with health issues or relationship issues that allows me to get past that to stand in front of the camera. So I don't want to actually agree with you in the fact that it's the empathy that's getting you there. Now here's the thing, homie, I'm not gonna leave you stranded. There also absolutely is an issue that you feel like you're getting manipulated, that you're getting mistreated by other people. So let's actually really acknowledge that. But I do not agree that it is your empathy that does that. I think that is what allows you to go into it, but it is the boundary setting that is now allowing the empathy to spill into maybe self-harm or self-abuse because you're letting other people mistreat you. Those words were not accidental. We choose to let people mistreat us. I want to just caveat that to say, obviously this isn't as easy if you are in an extremely abusive or unhealthy relationship. That actually has to be approached in a lot of other different ways. But when it comes to people crossing your boundaries, when it comes to you feeling like you are mistreated by your friends or people are taking advantage of you, that is a freaking choice. And here's the amazing thing, now you can do something about it. I'm not saying it's a choice so you freaking beat yourself up over it. I'm saying it's a bloody choice so that you can actually go, oh my God, I can do something. That to me is so freaking empowering, guys. So when I say it's a choice, bear freaking with me. It is to get you to your goal. It is not so that you beat yourself up and stay frozen. So I was actually talking to an Impact Theory University student who starts to tell me about the situation that she's in, where she had so much empathy over her dad. Her mum had passed away and her dad would come over every night for dinner. And so she would have dinner with him every night. During the day, she would go to work at her business that she freaking loved, her dream business she would go to every single day. Then she'd come home and take care of her newborn, who she loved more than life itself. And then every evening, she would sit with her father and have dinner. Now, in this situation, her father kept making her feel guilty, kept making her feel bad, kept saying to her, why are you spending all this time at work? You're neglecting your child. Really started to make herself feel badly about the fact that she wasn't paying attention to her child, even though she was fulfilling her own needs, her own purpose, and being super empathetic to the fact that her dad was alone every night, eating dinner. But she was feeling shittier and shittier about it. And so the first thing I said to him, okay, sit down with him and talk about boundaries. She goes, I've already tried that, Lisa. I honestly can't. He just keeps saying to me, why am I wasting time at work? But this is what makes me me, Lisa. She kept saying, this is what brings me joy. This is what makes me a better mother. But I don't want to also let my dad down because he's all by himself. And so I asked the very obvious next question. Does he have a door key? And she looked a little confused at first. She was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, do you let him in or does he have a door key? She goes, no, I let him in. And I said, that's a choice. And she tried to cut me off and I said, look, I totally understand you don't like those choices. I get it, guys. There are gonna be choices that we freaking hate so much that we will trick ourselves into believing it's not a choice. But she had a choice. She just chose not to look at it like that. And the choices were, be a stay-at-home mom, quit your job, quit your business. Choice number 2 is still do what you do and not let your dad in your house so that he starts to influence how you feel about yourself. But here's the other thing. No freaking judgment. If to you that isn't something you are interested in, if you're like, I will never ever tell my dad not to come over, I will never not let him in, amazing. Now you've made the choice. Now you can look back and say, this thing, all of this thing that I have chosen to do is leading me to this result. And so now you are put in this position where you have the choice. Does your empathy towards your father mean more to you than feeling like someone is quote unquote mistreating you or not being nice to you or whatever words you want to blanket? Now you actually have the decision. You can just look at those situations and be honest about what is going to impact you as an individual the most, with no freaking judgment. Is it that you want to be empathetic? Is it that you don't want someone to cross your boundary? I actually don't necessarily think that they have to be one or the other. I absolutely can be completely empathetic to my father and at the same time, absolutely not let anyone cross my boundary that I set. There are ways to do both, but you have to decide that one is going to be more important than the other and then set the boundary in accordance. But to me, and again, no freaking judgment, but to me, the highest thing for me is to never, ever let anyone mistreat me or manipulate me. That is, I've decided, my highest priority. So if that means I have to tell my dad not to come over, that doesn't change my empathy. That doesn't change how much I freaking care about him. But it doesn't affect how I act and how I show up for myself. Because guys, you should never, ever, ever, ever let anybody mistreat you or manipulate you. Period. Hope you enjoy this episode brought to you by our sponsors, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is professional counseling done securely online. For 10% off your first month, go to betterhelp.com/womenofImpact. Enjoy the episode. What are some ways to de-escalate someone else when they are seeing red? And how do you not become swept away in their emotional state? Oh my God, this is so hard and yet such a freaking powerful question, because I would let myself do that all the time. I'm an empath. I'm very close to my husband, so I would notice if he was in a bad day or if he was annoyed, that would then rub off on me. And I realized that actually doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve him, because now I'm actually just pouring fuel onto his annoyance or his fire. And it certainly doesn't help me, because I've just taken myself from being in this like jolly mood to now I'm freaking pissed off. So getting swept up in someone else's emotions is definitely something to be aware that we can do. And I freaking love that now that you're aware of it and now asking the steps and not to do it. So I'm going to be honest with you. There's going to be moments where you can de-escalate, that you can help the other person. And there's going to be moments where you just can't. And that is not your responsibility. You have to actually tell yourself that. You have to tell yourself, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna freaking show up to be the best version of myself. And what I mean by that is, who do you actually wanna be? Do you wanna be like super calm and collective? Then that's what you're gonna try and do. You're gonna try and show up as the super calm, cool, collective person. But no matter what you do, we have to remove our own emotions with how the other person is. And that's what I had to do with Tom. It doesn't mean that I don't care about him. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to try and help him de-escalate. But ultimately, I started with the final result. And the final result is I'm not going to let him pull me in to whatever emotional turmoil, let's just say, he is experiencing right now. I've made a mark. So now I've set that line. And now I go, how the hell do I do that? And then I work backwards. So now I know that someone else's response is on them. But what can I do to help it? So one of the keys, guys, is that sometimes or very often, we end up emotionally matching someone. We may not even mean to, but we do. So being aware of that, like I just said, is so important, that you know that you cannot meet that person where they are. So that means, first and freaking foremost, you must control your own emotions. Before you can help de-escalate them, you have to figure out and know how the hell you yourself stay cool, calm, and collective in those situations when someone else is freaking out. So identify that first. So for me, I would go, okay, I know that my face starts getting warm. I know that I start like stuttering. I know that my mind starts spinning. I keep repeating almost the same phrase in my mind over and over and over again. So identifying all these different elements and knowing in certain situations when the shit hits the fan, when someone else is freaking screaming or whatever, what do I do internally when they're freaking out in front of me? What am I doing internally that I know I have to de-escalate myself first? Because remember, like I said, if I just go straight to high level, there's no way any of us are going to de-escalate. You just freaking feed each other like a hungry beast. So I go, okay, know how to control yourself first. So I've just laid out a couple of things that I do. I then also take deep breaths. You may not be in a situation. My first advice actually is always remove yourself from the situation if you're too hot-headed, but there are many times you can't do that. So what do? I take a deep breath and I exhale. Take a deep breath and I exhale. And then if it's my darling husband who is escalating, I literally will just stare at him and remind myself of all the things I love about him, and remind myself of why I'm with him, and remind myself of why I'm standing there interacting with him in the first place. Like, all these things take you out emotionally of what is actually happening. So I'm actually trying to create this habit loop over and over and over again that I can keep coming back to, that pulls me out of the emotion when someone's like screaming in my face. And those are the things I do. So step 1, take deep breaths. Step 2, repeat. What do I like this person? What do they remind me of? Why am I even in this conversation in the first place? And then, of course, reminding myself, stay calm, Lisa, stay calm, because meeting hot-headedness never works. Right, so now let's say I've de-escalated and the person is raising. I'll go, what do I know about them? Now, it's going to be very different if it's a stranger. If a stranger is freaking the F out at you, to be honest, I would just stand there like this. Like, I actually would, because, and here's actually, in fact, I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is more like what I would do. I'm trying to pierce my lip. I'm like literally trying to squeeze them together so that no words come out, because I can accidentally say things. That's my personality. So I remind myself, I do all these things ahead of time. I take these deep breaths. I like pierce my lips really tight closed, and then I just nod at the person, because let me tell you, once someone's got everything out, there's nowhere for them to go. Now, I'm going to caveat this again. If someone is so disrespectful to me in that moment, I won't even bother de-escalating them. I would just think, Lisa, be the person you want to be. And I'd be, excuse me, please do not speak to me like that. I find that very rude, and I'd rather you didn't speak to me like that. And if they did again, I'd be like, okay, just so you know, I'm going to leave the room. Whatever, that was terrible. And so if they keep doing it, and they don't pay attention, well, now I know. All right, I've set my boundary. They've crossed the boundary. No, thank you. This isn't a relationship I want to be in. This isn't a conversation that I actually want to be a part of. So thank you so much for being open and honest. I'm actually just going to remove myself now because I don't appreciate your disrespect. Boom! Like, have the words, have the phrases, have the language. Stay calm, say them firmly. All of these things will help you in that situation. And now I'm going to come back to the actual question on how you de-escalate someone, let's say that you care, when you see, when they are seeing red. If you know them, then I think it is important to do all the work prior. All the freaking work prior, so that when you get to this situation, you're ready to handle it. So in situations where you actually do want to help this person de-escalate, when you see them seeing red, then do all the work prior. Everything comes, to be honest guys, everything comes before and everything comes after. What happens actually in the moment is almost irrelevant. And the reason why I say that is everything prior, if it's someone you know, do all the work. What do you know about them? What do you know about them giving you advice? Like my sister, freaking love her more than life itself. And because I'm so close to her, when she's seeing red, I literally say, do you want me to listen or do you want advice? while she's seeing red. I'll actually say this. And the funny thing is, it actually puts a little smile on her face, but she'll stop and she'll be like, I just need you to listen. Cool, now I can actually let her go off. Now, if she's seeing red, I've actually just given her space, knowing what to do, who they are, how to handle them. Then you have the event, and then you do the post-mortem. Like, you actually have to do the post-mortem and go, oh, what did work? Did that work? Nope, that just failed. And it becomes a rinse and repeat, guys, a rinse and repeat. One of my favorite freaking things is the 80s movie Karate Kid, the wax off, wax on. You keep having to practice, practice, practice. Give up the idea that you're going to get this perfect. Give up the idea that you have the magic wand that's going to make everybody else de-escalate when they're around you. It is not your responsibility, but you can try. And the trying is the wax on, wax off. And not to beat yourself up if you end up not succeeding, but to keep freaking practicing. And what ends up happening with practicing, guys, what ends up happening to Daniel's son in Karate Kid? They broke his ankle, and instead of staying on the floor, he'd waxed off so much, they ended up doing the freaking crane kick and winning the fight. Hopefully you see the point, that it becomes practice. It doesn't make a difference if you fall on your floor and break your ankle. It just matters if you've practiced enough to be able to get freaking back up and then move on. And that's the key. That is the key right there, to keep getting back up and moving on. What's up, guys? Now, I wake up every single day busting my ass to do these videos in the hope that one of them hits you so hard that your life is changed for the better and forever. But I know that sometimes it will take a lot more than just me standing in front of a camera to help those who are truly struggling, which is why it is so meaningful to be teaming up with BetterHelp. BetterHelp assess your very specific needs and match you with your own online licensed professional therapist. Guys, I get it's hard to make that first step and ask for help. So I'm really hoping this makes it easier for you or anyone you know that is struggling to take that first actionable step. So especially for you guys, we have a special offer. Visit betterhelp.com/women-of-impact. That's better, HELP, and join the over 500,000 people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/women-of-impact. That's 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/women-of-impact. Now, back to the episode. How do I stop feeling guilty? Before I even do something where I need to assert myself, speak up, defend myself, or just want to say anything, I hesitate. Or worse, I won't say at all because I worry I might offend or hurt the other person. All right, I'm gonna answer it, and you may hate my answer, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I actually still feel guilty about things. I honestly do. And the truth is that I've reframed it to be a way of showing me where I care. Here's the other point though, is that you can't let it stop you. You can't let the guilt of something let it stop you from speaking up or being assertive or defending yourself. And that's where what we really, really do need to address. So, first of all, like I said, the guilt is showing you very specifically what you're worried about. So instead of trying to stop it, instead of trying to stop the guilt, bring it in, make it your mate, put your arm over it, give it a cup of tea, and then listen to what the guilt is actually telling you. Is it that you feel guilty because you keep letting your friend down, and every time they ask you out, you keep saying no, and that is the guilt? All right, well, identified, you maybe not feel like a good friend anymore because you keep saying no to them. That's actually an important thing to address. Okay, I don't feel like a good friend. Well, now go with no judgment, am I a good friend? Because here's the great news, when you ask yourself the question, it just leaves you with the answer. And now it's your choice to go, okay, I am not a good friend and I want to be, so now I have the answer and I can adjust my behavior. But if you ask yourself a question and go, yeah, actually that person doesn't really mean that much to me. All right, but now that you've got your answer, you can move on without the freaking guilt. But assessing it instead of just pushing it away, honestly can be so freaking powerful if you let it. And that's the key, guys, if you let it. All right, now on to the other part of speaking up, defending yourself, or just wanting to say something, or just wanting to say anything. You hesitate. Now, what do you hesitate? Because you even said, I don't want to make people feel badly about themselves. That's so sweet and so kind that I actually don't want to brush past that. Like, that's really, really sweet. So instead of beating yourself up, that's why I'm saying it. Instead of beating yourself up that, oh my God, I feel so guilty and I let people push me around and I don't speak up and I don't defend myself because I don't want to upset anyone and I'm so terrible. No, you care. No, you're sweet. No, you actually want to be, you actually want to be nice to people. Don't freaking dismiss that, homie. That's great. But now, is it in detriment to your own self-esteem? Is it in detriment to how you feel about yourself because you feel like you are not there for yourself? Okay, now the question is, what's more important? Being there for yourself or not offending people? Now, I honestly ask that with no judgment. And that's the thing, guys. I'm not here to BS you, but those are your choices. Do you let someone overstep their mark, you not defend yourself in order to make other people feel comfortable? Now, I'm guessing the fact that you asked this question in the first place means that you are not okay with that, which is brilliant, which is wonderful, because now you know I will no longer act this way because it is no longer serving me. Now you can stop dictating your actions based on how other people are going to perceive you, or whether you've hurt them or upset them or not. Because you've just decided, you've just had those two choices, remember? You've just decided that you feel more confident and want to show up more for yourself than you do wanting to make everyone happy. That's an important decision to make because it's going to get uncomfortable. None of this shit is easy, guys. None of this shit is easy. It's going to be freaking difficult. It's going to be heart-wrenching at times. You're going to fail. You're going to fall on your face. And that's something not to beat yourself up about. You have to go into it knowing I'm going to keep failing, but I'm going to get better as I go because I'm going to wax on and wax off. So now, you've made this decision that it's not going to be easy, that it's going to be painstaking, but it's going to be worth it. I just have to keep going. Now you've decided that, and now you've decided that you no longer are going to allow other people's feelings dictate, even though you care, you're no longer going to let them dictate what you say and how you show up. Amazing. Now you're on to that next step. It's all a stepping stone, guys. Don't feel badly. You're gonna mess up on the first step, and then a year down the line, you're gonna mess up on the third step, and that's okay. That's the point. You have to keep telling yourself it's okay. You're gonna keep messing up. It's a rinse and repeat, refine and repeat. So now we've gotten to the point where you've made all these decisions. You've made it all with your eyes wide open, in utter total clarity. You've made this decision that you will speak up. You will defend yourself. Great. And now it comes to, what will you say? How do you say it? What is your tone? Because I actually don't think that just because you defend yourself, just because you speak up, that other people are going to be insulted by it. Now you've made all these decisions and you still don't want to hurt someone's feelings, which is beautiful, remember? Now you're going to go, how can I actually not hurt their feelings? What are the things that I can say in these situations? Like, come up with like a little dictionary and have it in your pocket, and maybe you practice over and over again that when someone says this, I will respond with this. When someone says this, I will respond with this. So let's say it's defending yourself. Like, the perfect time is to say, I'm sorry, I do not appreciate that you saying that to me. I would actually use the word personally, offended, because now it makes it personal and now it becomes, I feel like I've taken it personal, and I feel like there's wiggle room for someone to try and persuade me that I shouldn't take it personally. That's actually the truth. So what I do is I say, I'm sorry, just right now, you actually have crossed the line for me. Maybe you didn't mean it, and I can actually really appreciate that. But I just want to be open and honest with you that right now, this is actually a little, I am perceiving this as a little rude. You may not mean it, and that's okay, right? That's just a little example of whatever situation you're going to be. That's the sort of language that you can use so that you go into it knowing that you're not meaning to offend them. But again, guys, it goes to an escalation process. I will be calm and I will be cool and I will be collective and respectful as step one. But you better believe that if someone then comes in and overshadows me and tries to disrespect that, I've given myself permission to speak up, to elevate that, to up my tone, to use harder language. I've given myself permission, and I've done that all beforehand. So that in this situation, I go, okay, Lisa, you're coming into it. You love this person or you don't want to hurt them. You don't even have to love them, right? It could be like the coffee shop barista that you see every morning. It could be someone like that. But you go into it knowing that you care about them and that you want them to not get hurt. But yet at the same time, you're giving yourself permission to go, I'm going to come in with this, respect. But you know what? If they keep overstepping the mark, I've given myself permission to escalate it and use these words. And you better believe I've given myself permission to do this and permission, right? And now you go into it and say, and the reason why I say permission is because I don't like beating myself up. I really don't. It doesn't make me feel good. So I say permission so that I have given myself the grace to go, I've said this and it didn't work. All right, I'll improve next time. That's what I mean by permission. Give yourself permission to be able to try and fail, to adjust accordingly, to escalate when you need to. Give yourself permission to do all of that. And then trust me, you'll be able to go into it feeling great, feeling like, oh my God, I came into this trying not to hurt them, but it ended up, they overstepped the boundary and I had to escalate the situation. Now you don't feel badly. Now you did it with your eyes wide open. Now at least you can feel good about yourself. Because ultimately, guys, I'm just gonna say this, ultimately, this all comes down to how do you feel about yourself when you're laying at home by yourself in the dark at night trying to fall asleep. How do you feel? That's what it comes down to. Are you proud of yourself? Sure, you fucked up, but are you proud of yourself? Are you proud that you showed up? Are you proud that you watched this video and you came up with a little game plan and you turned up, but even though the game plan failed, be proud. If you want to learn how to get back up after you've fallen to your knees, click here right now. On today's episode of Women of Impact, the incredibly awe-inspiring Sarah Jakes Roberts is here and sharing her darkest battles.
I don't feel smart. I don't feel worthy.